In the top-floor boardroom of Harrison Industries' Manhattan skyscraper, enveloped by the October twilight, Isabella Harrison stood by a large window, finalizing her documents while gazing at the distant skyline. For the past 3 years, she had dedicated herself to proving her worth at this company. After earning her MBA, leading numerous projects to success, and most importantly, striving to gain her father's trust. Around 4 p.m., the boardroom door began to open. Her father, Anthony Harrison, her uncle Daniel and his wife Kathy, and her cousin Joseph entered. Joseph's face bore his usual confident smile. "Everyone, please take a seat." Her father's voice lacked its usual authoritative tone. Isabella, feeling a sense of unease, took her seat. Across the table, Joseph casually flaunted his expensive watch. "Today I have a significant announcement regarding the future of the company. I have decided to transfer management of the company to Joseph." Those words struck Isabella like arrows of ice. This decision has already been approved by the board of directors. Starting next month, Joseph will be the CEO. Wait a second. Isabella's voice echoed in the quiet boardroom. "Dad, this is not what we discussed." Joseph cleared his throat lightly. "Isabella, business sometimes. I'm not talking to you." Isabella glared sharply at Joseph, feeling her usual composure slip away. "Dad, you promised me. After I got my MBA, you said you'd give me a chance." "Isabella." This time, Aunt Kathy spoke up, thinking about the future of the family. "Family? I've worked late every day for the past 3 years, sacrificed my weekends, all for this company. What has Joseph done? He only joined the company recently." A heavy silence dominated the room. "Isabella, I fully recognize your contributions," her father said quietly. "That's why, in the HR department." "That's enough." Isabella stood up. "I've had enough." She stuffed her documents into her bag. As she headed for the door, Isabella turned back towards her father. "Dad, I'm disappointed in you, but even more in myself. I trusted you too much." With those final words, Isabella left the boardroom, focusing solely on getting away. Just as the elevator doors were about to close, she caught her father's puzzled expression. She heard someone call her name from behind, but she didn't turn back. Clutching her leather bag tightly, she stepped out into the chilly October air. The streets were gradually filling with people finishing work. Isabella walked mechanically, replaying her last conversation with her father over and over in her head. "Why?" she murmured softly. As she stopped at a traffic light, her phone vibrated in her pocket. Messages from her best friend, Christina, lined the screen. "Are you okay? I've been worried since I can't reach you." "Where are you?" "Isabella, please reply." Isabella typed a brief reply. "Central Park. On a bench." 15 minutes later, Christina sat down beside her, holding 2 takeaway coffees. "How did the meeting go?" Christina asked, her tone suggesting she already knew the answer. "It's over," Isabella said in a hollow voice. "Everything." "What do you mean?" "Dad decided to hand over the company to Joseph." Christina exclaimed in surprise. "What?" "But Isabella, you've been working towards that for..." "Yes, 3 years. The MBA, working late nights, sacrificing weekends for projects. It was all for nothing. But that's not right. Your dad has always trusted me." Isabella grimaced with a wry smile. "I thought so too, but the look in Dad's eyes today..." The emotion in his eyes was more than just regret. There seemed to be a deep sense of guilt lurking there. "So, what will you do now?" "I don't know, but I can't stay here." That night, Isabella began packing her belongings in her apartment. Documents, photographs, keepsakes, everything seemed different now. Especially the family photo on the living room shelf caught her attention. In the photo, her father and Joseph's expressions bore a striking resemblance. Isabella picked up the photo and stared at it intently. The phone rang. It was from her father. Isabella ignored the call and tossed the photo into a box. However, deep down, she began to faintly sense that this was more than just a management issue. "Are you really okay?" It was the second week's morning in Christina's guest room. The morning sun shone through the window, illuminating the unopened boxes. "Yeah, somehow." Isabella tried to smile, but it didn't come out right. "Christina, don't you find it odd?" "What?" "Everything. Dad has always been about meritocracy. Ever since I was little, he taught me that. Success depends on effort. Yet, Joseph has no achievements. Not just that. The timing of Dad's decision is odd too. Just as I got my MBA and started being entrusted with important projects." Christina put toast on a plate and said, "Family matters can be complicated sometimes, right?" "Yes, family matters. There must be more to why Dad wanted to pass on the company than just business judgment." Suddenly, Isabella said, "I need to go back home to pick up some stuff I left." "What now? Are you planning to see your dad?" "No, he should be at work on weekday afternoons." An hour later, Isabella stood in front of her family home. She unlocked the door and quietly entered. The housekeeper, Michelle, only comes on Thursdays. It was supposed to be empty today. On her way to her old room upstairs, she stopped. The study door was slightly open. Normally, Dad always locks it. Hesitating, Isabella entered. The large bookshelf was lined with old albums. As a child, looking at these albums was only for special occasions. She picked up the oldest album and began flipping through the pages. Her parents' wedding, Isabella's birth, her early childhood photos, and then the pages where Joseph began to appear. Isabella quickly flipped back through the pages. Joseph started appearing in family photos when he was about 5 years old. There were no photos of him before that. Isabella. Turning around, there stood Rebecca. She had been working at the company for over 30 years as a secretary. She had been contributing to the company even before her father became president. "Rebecca, why are you here?" "I came to sort some documents. I have the keys to the study." Her eyes were fixed on the album Isabella was holding. They stared at each other in silence for a long time. Then, Rebecca sighed deeply. "Your grandfather always said this day would come." Rebecca slowly entered the room and closed the door. "Mr. Frank Harrison, your grandfather left some instructions before he passed away." Rebecca handed Isabella an old envelope. "This was left for you by your grandfather for when you're ready to learn the truth." The envelope was labeled, "For Isabella, when you are ready to know the truth," in her grandfather's distinctive handwriting. Inside was a note and another envelope. The note was succinctly written, "Dear Isabella, if you are reading this, it means you have begun to seek the truth. Deliver the next envelope to my old friend and family lawyer, Robert Morris. He will explain everything. With love, grandfather." Robert Morris. Isn't he the company's advisory lawyer? No. Mr. Morris was your grandfather's personal lawyer, unrelated to the company. Isabella pulled out her smartphone and searched for Morris's law firm. The office was located on the Upper East Side. "Take care, but make me one promise. Do not discuss this matter with anyone yet." Isabella nodded silently in agreement. During the taxi ride, she thought of her grandfather. He was a calm and wise man, always concerned about the future of his family. Morris's law firm was located on the 5th floor of an old building. Upon opening the heavy wooden door, Isabella was greeted by the office's classical ambience. "I am Isabella Harrison. I would like to meet with Mr. Robert Morris. I'm sorry, but today's appointments are. I was referred by my grandfather, Frank Harrison." The receptionist's expression changed upon hearing this. "Please wait a moment," A few minutes later, a gentleman with white hair appeared. "Isabella? Is it really you?" Robert Morris looked much older than Isabella remembered, but his eyes still held a sharp glint. "Frank told me you might come someday." He led Isabella into an inner office. "This is from my grandfather." Isabella handed him an envelope. Robert carefully opened it, and after inspecting the contents, he let out a deep sigh. "Please have a seat, Isabella," he said in a calm voice. "This is going to be a long conversation." He retrieved an old file from the bookshelf labeled Harrison Family. Personal Records 1995 to 1996. "There's something you need to know about your father and Joseph. Their relationship." Isabella gasped, intuitively sensing that what she was about to hear would forever change her life. "Your father was a law student in 1995 and was dating a woman named Kathy Thompson." "Kathy, my aunt." He pulled out a photograph. It showed a young Kathy. She was a student at the same university, in the School of Education. Isabella gasped again. That spring, Kathy became pregnant. However, their relationship had already ended by then. So, Kathy decided to raise the child alone. Your father was already dating your current mother at that time. A heavy silence fell over the office. "That child was Joseph." Robert nodded quietly. Thus, Isabella and Joseph were half-siblings, a fact that their father had kept hidden from Isabella. 2 years later, Kathy met Daniel Harrison. He promised to raise Joseph as his own son. But why now? Your grandfather, Frank, knew everything. Robert opened another file. He was concerned that this secret would surface someday, especially when the issue of company succession arose. That's why grandfather left the letter with Rebecca. Yes. Robert stood up and retrieved a new document from the safe. "This is the deed to a trust fund your grandfather established in case you lost control of the company." Isabella took the document. "While conditional, this can be used as capital to start a new business. Frank believed in your talent. But why didn't grandfather tell my father everything? He respected each person's choices. Your father's, Kathy's, and Daniel's. Does my mother know?" "No, only a very few involved are aware of this truth." Everything seemed to connect now. Her father's sudden decision, the transfer of the company to Joseph, and the discomfort she had long felt. Her father had feigned the promise of leadership to Isabella, only to let her work for nothing in return. When the time came to decide on a president, his guilt prevailed, and he chose to make amends to Joseph, disregarding Isabella's relentless efforts. "What did my grandfather want by telling me this truth?" "He wanted you to find your own path, not tied to the company's succession, but to pursue your own potential." As she gazed out at the Manhattan nightscape, she solidified her new resolve. "Thank you, Mr. Morris." She turned back. "I will fulfill my grandfather's wishes in my own way." That night, Isabella thought about her grandfather as she looked out from her apartment window. He had always been concerned about the future of his family, and now his legacy was supporting her new beginning. I will now explain our company's efforts to reduce environmental impacts in next-generation manufacturing technologies. In a boardroom on the top floor of a Wall Street skyscraper, Isabella stood before 10 investors. 1 year since its inception, her company had steadily grown. The presentation screen displayed diagrams of innovative manufacturing processes. An intriguing proposal. An elderly investor leaned forward. However, such innovative technology requires a significant initial investment. Just then, the conference room door opened. "I apologize for my delay." Joseph entered with a broad smile. Isabella's heart skipped a beat. "I am Joseph Harrison from Harrison Industries." He introduced himself. "Actually, we have been considering a similar project." The atmosphere in the room shifted. Investors' gazes darted between Isabella and Joseph. What a coincidence. Isabella maintained her composure. However, our patented technology is all ready. Of course, our approach is a bit different, more traditional. The presentation ended as planned, but the investor's demeanor had clearly become more cautious. Isabella. One investor approached her after the meeting. Your proposal is excellent. However, competing with a major firm like Harrison Industries, their technology is different. Isabella responded firmly. And we already have a track record. Back at the office, Christina was waiting. How did it go? Joseph showed up. Isabella sank into a chair, tired. It seems his father's company is trying to enter our business model. But that means... Yes. Isabella opened her laptop. They have a critical weakness. The latest financial report of Harrison Industries was displayed on her screen. Under Joseph's management, the company's performance had rapidly deteriorated. Look, research and development expenses have been significantly cut. They shouldn't have the capacity to start new projects. And, never mind. I can't tell you yet, but rest assured, they won't be an obstacle for us. That night, on her way home, Isabella received an email from an industry magazine editor. Your information was very helpful. The article will be published tomorrow. As she looked at the screen, a cold smile formed on her lips. For the past 3 weeks, she had been meticulously preparing. Evidence of Joseph's sloppy management, traces of fraudulent accounting, and, most importantly, opaque financial transactions with Daniel. She had anonymously provided all the evidence to the industry magazine. Gathering information was extremely challenging. However, many of the long-term employees, dissatisfied with Joseph's autocratic management, were willing to help. They gradually compiled evidence together. The next morning, the article sent shockwaves through the industry. Harrison Industries. A muddled management revealed. It detailed Joseph's lack of managerial skills, sloppy accounting practices, and illegal financial operations under headlines. The article meticulously reported on several dubious transactions since his appointment, significant cuts in R&D spending, opaque foreign investments, and most notably, inappropriate transactions with a company managed by Daniel. Everything was substantiated with detailed documents and testimonies from insiders. The Securities and Exchange Commission immediately launched an investigation. The sight of investigators entering the headquarters was broadcast on national news. Joseph was forced to hold an emergency press conference. Even dressed in an expensive suit, his face was visibly fraught with anxiety. I deeply apologize for the issues raised in this report. Isabella's father, Anthony, was also present at the press conference. Gone was the image of a dignified executive. Instead, a tired old man sat, apologizing for his son's scandal. It was my mismanagement. I take full responsibility for everything. Reporters bombarded him with further questions. Why had he entrusted the management to his nephew, Joseph? What were his thoughts on the treatment of his competent biological daughter, Isabella Harrison? Anthony evaded all questions with the phrase, "This matter is currently under investigation." However, that was just the tip of the iceberg. As the Securities and Exchange Commission's investigation progressed, more severe issues came to light. Systematic embezzlement by Daniel and Joseph, fictitious transactions, and illegal transfers to overseas accounts were uncovered. Asset hiding under Kathy's name was also discovered. Harrison Industries' stock price hit the daily limit down day after day. Long-standing business partners terminated their contracts one after another, and banks began to pull their loans. The board of directors convened an emergency general meeting and resolved to dismiss Joseph as CEO. But it was already too late. The company's reputation had hit rock bottom, and shareholders were preparing for a class action lawsuit. The once glamorous headquarters building was besieged daily by the media, waiting for new scandals to emerge. Meanwhile, Isabella's new company was achieving steady growth. Her developed environmental technologies were setting new standards in the industry. Major media outlets hailed her as the standard-bearer of the environmental tech revolution, and investors were eagerly injecting capital. Particularly notable was her newly developed manufacturing process. This groundbreaking technology reduced environmental impact by 70% compared to traditional methods and had already secured several patents. This technology represented a breakthrough in the very field Harrison Industries had long pursued. Isabella's success was proving to be the most effective revenge against her father and Joseph. The daughter they had underestimated and tried to sideline was now leading the forefront of the industry. This irony became a quiet topic of discussion among industry insiders. 6 months later, the day of arrest arrived. Joseph, Daniel, and Kathy were arrested on charges of securities fraud and embezzlement. Isabella's father, Anthony, was also charged as an accomplice. The image of them being led away in handcuffs from their upscale homes topped the evening news. Harrison Industries executives arrested, charged with fraudulent accounting and embezzlement. The arrests shook the industry once again. The cunning method of money laundering through Daniel's affiliated companies was particularly well reported due to its sophistication. The trial lasted over a year. During that time, Isabella never set foot in the courtroom. However, she meticulously followed every development. One shocking fact after another came to light in court. Joseph had started diverting company assets for personal use shortly after his appointment. Daniel assisted him while funneling benefits to his own company. And Anthony had known everything and turned a blind eye. In the end, Joseph received a 5-year prison sentence. Daniel got 7 years, Kathy received a 3-year sentence with probation, and Anthony was sentenced to 4 years. When the verdicts were delivered, there was no trace of their former arrogance on Anthony and Joseph's faces. 4 years later, in autumn, Isabella was reading the morning paper in her new office on the top floor of a Manhattan building. The front page featured a bold headline: "The shocking truth of the Harrison family. Former CEO Joseph Harrison's secret birth revealed." The article detailed how Joseph was actually the biological child of Anthony and Kathy, raised secretly as Daniel's adoptive child. DNA test results were published, leaving no room for doubt. Just as expected, Isabella quietly closed the newspaper. In fact, she had been pulling the strings behind this report. Old documents found during the securities fraud investigation, information from Rebecca, and the cooperation of Robert Morris. She had strategically leaked all the evidence to the media. "Are you really okay with this?" Christina asked, now the CEO of the company and visibly concerned. "Yes." Isabella looked out the window. "This ends all the lies." That afternoon, she received a call from her father. It had been 2 weeks since his release from prison. This report must have been the final blow for him. "I want to meet." His voice was hoarse. As she entered the restaurant, she immediately spotted her father. The once dignified executive was gone, replaced by just a tired old man sitting by the window, waiting for her. "All of this was your doing, wasn't it?" There was no anger in her father's voice. Only a deep weariness could be felt. There was a need to reveal the truth. Isabella quietly replied, "To ensure that no one else would be hurt." "Joseph. He saw this article in prison." "I know. But he had the right to know, too." Her father was silent for a long time. "I made all the wrong choices." His voice trembled faintly. "When I left Kathy and found out about Joseph, I ran away from everything. And that regret influenced how I treated you. That's why you let me make futile efforts, only to hand the company over to Joseph." "That's right. And as a result, we lost everything." Isabella looked at her father's aged face. The intense anger she once felt was no longer there. "I have found a new life," she said quietly. "Just as grandfather wanted. Frank." My father saw through my foolishness until the end." "No." Isabella shook her head. "Grandfather just wanted to give all of us a chance to face the truth." As they left the restaurant, the evening sky was beautiful. A week after the reports, Joseph's wife filed for divorce. There were rumors that Kathy had fled the country, and Daniel tearfully apologized in front of reporters at a press conference. It was all a tragedy spawned by years of lies. Back in the office, Isabella's desk was piled with plans for a new project: next-generation development in environmental technology. This was truly what she had wanted to pursue. Outside the window, the evening sky slowly enveloped in the cloak of night. The former headquarters building of Harrison Industries was now occupied by another company. However, Isabella's new company continued to grow steadily. It was not just a story of revenge, but a journey in pursuit of truth. Exactly as her grandfather had wanted.